Hello, my name's Julian Edgar, and I'm the author of the book you see in front of you, Setting Up a Home Car Workshop. What I want to do in today's video is talking about forming your own bell mouths. Now, a bell mouth is used on the entrance to a carburetor. It's also used on the entrance to the airbox with a fuel injection system. And I had a need for a 50mm, 2-inch diameter bell mouth, and rather than buy it, I thought I'd see if I could make my own, and in many ways it was actually easier than I expected. Let's take a look at how I did it. Now, firstly, here it is. You can see that diameter there, as I say, 50mm, 2-inch, but it's got a nice flared curved bell mouth, which greatly enhances flow into an open-ended tube. So here's what I was using it for. I was using it as the exit in an intercooler end tank, an intercooler that I was welding up, and you can see it's placed in the end tank before I put the cap on the end of that tank. So I started off with a section of 2-inch diameter aluminium tube, fairly thin wall, only a couple of millimeters thick. You don't want it really thin or you won't be able to do it, and if it's too thick you won't also be able to do it. So it's a bit of a balancing act to get the thickness right. The first thing I did is I pushed this former into the end of the tube. Now the former just happens to be a plumb bob that I had lying around, a steel plumb bob, and I used a hydraulic press to start flaring the end of the tube. Now here I've overdone it a bit. You can see I'm crushing the other side of the tube and it's starting to become distorted. The way you avoid that is you use plenty of lubricant in the inside where you're doing the pressing, and you do it bit by bit and keep rotating it around. Obviously you have to have a gap so that the bottom of the former can come out the bottom of your tube. Now, you're probably not going to get it right first step. You probably want to have 3 or 4 bits of tube prepared. Of course, they're only a few cents each, so that's no big deal. But get the flare happening using a press. At a pinch, you might have been able to use a wooden mallet to push the former in, but you want to get the flare actually starting. The next step is to put the slightly flared tube into a lathe or maybe a drill press, and use a forming tool to start spinning the edges of the aluminium outwards. Now you need plenty of lubricant on the tool. You could use a hardwood tool, as is used typically in metal spinning. I just used a steel bar with a rounded end, and as I say, plenty of lubricant. So what you do is you bear it against this part here, and you push this to one side, and it applies great force, and as the lathe is spinning, it gradually opens out that part of the tube. Now, how do you hold it in the lathe without crushing the light aluminium tube? You need a former inside. I just used a nylon plug that I'd cut out previously with a hole saw. You could also use a wooden plug or something of that sort. Once you've got the shape largely there, you can use some sandpaper or a file, spin the formed bell mouth in the lathe as you're applying the sandpaper. Be careful of any sharp metal bits. You don't want any splinters going into your fingers, but you can smooth the transition from the parallel part to the flared part. And this is primarily why you need to have at least a little bit of wall thickness to play with, because obviously you're sanding or grinding away part of that. Here again is the finished result. Look, I didn't do this first off. I think I did 2 or 3 or 4 trials, but after that I was able to make quite repeatable ones that looked, I thought, reasonably good. And of course, at a few cents each to make them, they're vastly cheaper than anything you can buy off the shelf. The book's called Setting Up a Home Car Workshop. Lots of tips and tricks from someone who does work with their hands a lot on their own cars, what you can achieve at home when you're working and modifying your own car. Thank you.